Hey there, welcome to the Jeff and Heidi Show, where you're going to have the opportunity to listen to and learn from everyday entrepreneurs. All right, welcome to the Jeff and Heidi Show. I'm Jeff Heggie of Jeff Heggie Coaching. My co-host isn't with me today, Heidi Anderson of ECI Secure Pay, but I am so excited today to have Renee Lopez with me. I've had the opportunity to read her book. I've had the opportunity to talk with her a little bit offline, and I know this is going to be a very informative and great conversation we have. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of a background on Renee, and then I'll let her go into it more. But she's a leadership development coach. I guess one of the first things, because we are going to be talking sports today, she's a former college coach of 14 years. She's coached in high school, and the part of her title that gives me a little bit of shivers when I read it is NCAA compliance director. But she works with companies, churches, individuals, athletes. She's part of the John Maxwell team. She's a certified presenter with 3-Dimensional Coaching, Positive Coaching Alliance, and a certified speaker and trainer with the John Gordon companies. And so, Renee, thank you for being with me. I'm so excited to talk about all the things that we're going to get into today. So just share us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Well, I'm really excited to share with all of your listeners and be able to discuss a little bit what it's like, being a coach, which transferred into being an entrepreneur and an author. And it's been quite a journey for sure, but there's a lot of things that transfer over, being competitive on the field, and then what that looks like in terms of the business world too. So really excited to work with you guys and share some of the information we've talked about today.
Awesome. Thank you. So, I joke about the NCAA compliance director. And the reason I say that, having a coaching background and knowing that there's so much out there that not only athletes don't know, parents don't know, coaches don't know. And so right off the bat, if you're not watching this on video, her book, Looking for a Full Ride, it's a must. If you are an athlete or you've got an athlete that is looking to go to the next level, I would say this is a must read. And actually, Renee, just mention what you said to me before about other coaches that have, at first just saying, oh, it's just a book about going to get a scholarship or whatever. Talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's funny. We interviewed 65 college coaches and athletic directors across 19 sports for it. And it's been funny because I had, a lot of people just before we actually went to publication, actually read a lot of college coaches just to make sure I was, all of the information was on track and we were doing the right things. And everyone keeps saying, oh, well, I don't really need to read it because they're college coaches. So they live and breathe it every day. And then, they're reading it because they're helping me from an editing standpoint or, just give an editorial perspective. And, it's funny, all of them say, well, I didn't really need it, but I know 12 different people that actually need it. And so it's been a really good information that's been getting out there to families and be able to help serve them and understand the process because, so many of them look and they see, they watch the movie like The Blind Side and you see what goes on in The Blind Side, what happens in The Blind Side. All these college coaches come knocking at his door, telling him how great he is as an athlete. And saying, here, we'll give you this and that and the other. And, Nick Saban shows up and, all these big time coaches and everyone has the misconceptions and thinking that that's how the recruiting process goes. And for 99.9% of the kids, it doesn't go that way. And so being able to teach kids what the process is, understand what it is, also be able to support the parents through the process, as well as, a school counselor who may not have the sports background to understand what this process looks like, but also their high school and club travel coaches too. So the idea is to really help as many people as we can. And we've been trying to get the word out and be able to help them in all of these misconceptions that are out there.
There's so much in this that we really could sit here and talk about this for hours because there's so much that these athletes need to know. But I guess, that's number one. What the kids see, they see the movies, they see the social media, and, they have their expectations. But, if you're a basketball player and Coach K isn't pounding on your door, you're wondering why, right? And so yep. I guess that's a great place to start is what are some of the processes? Talk a little bit about when athletes should start focusing on their recruiting And also, if we're looking at ages, you hear people talk about, oh, this kid's in 8th grade and, UConn's looking at him, and, really talk about what the truth is on when kids should start looking at it and what coaches are allowed to do.
Absolutely. It varies by sport, and you can actually download those basic rules from my website for free. We'll give you all those information here in our notes, but you can download it for free, the basic Division I rules and Division II and III rules. They're a little bit different, as well as different from NAIA school rules, as well as national junior colleges. And so it's important to know the differences of what your sport can do and what they can't do in terms of the timelines. So don't always assume just because you know what it is for, the friend down the street who says, oh, this is what my basketball kid did, and this is what my soccer kid did. And there are different timelines, and there are different times in terms of when they can start the communication process and when they can email, the coaches of what the coaches can do. Now, the key part of this is student athletes, you can always take charge of the process and start initiating contact to college coaches, sending them video links. And I always say, let's start the process of educating ourselves in the 8th grade and 9th grade and really start to understand what the process looks like and what we want to be doing and what we want out of a college. And people say, well, that's crazy early. Well, let me tell you, you want to be on the radar of a college coach by the end of your sophomore year. You want them to know who you are and that what you can contribute in terms of, what position you play, but also who you are in terms of being a leader, as well as what are your academics. And one of the key parts of starting when you're in 8th, 9th grade is that you need to also look and see if you are on track to be eligible for the NCAA. Now, here's where that compliance part comes in, that everyone says, I love compliance directors in the world. They have one of the worst jobs in America. And there's some great people that are out there that really try to help make sure kids are on track. And the key part is many families don't realize, people think that, oh, well, I'm on track to graduate from high school, so I'm fine. And it's like, no, you're not always fine, because the NCAA looks at core courses and a core course's GPA. They have specific things that are designated from your high school. Now, somebody's going to come back and say, well, what about this course? What about this course? And I'd say, always go back to the NCAA website and then sit down with your school counselors and plan out your 4 years of what courses you're going to be taking to make sure that you're not going to miss a class that you need to take in order to be cleared for eligibility. Now, people always say, well, my kid has good grades, they'll be fine. Well, let me tell you an awful story. This happened. I had a kid with 30 ACT and a kid who had a 4.0, AP student, honor student, everything on track in terms of doing all the high academic stuff. Well, it comes to find out that same year, we were also recruiting a kid who was a very big stretch. We didn't know if we'd even get them accepted in the college. Okay, we were crossing our fingers, hoping that they would. And we didn't know if they were going to be on track for eligibility. Well, I get a phone call that probably the last week of May from one of my compliance staff at the time. And he calls me and says, hey, we need to talk about this player. Well, he's referring to my player, who's my 30 ACT 4.0 kid that I have not even thought twice about if she was on track for eligibility. And I said, no, you've confused them. You meant about this kid, because in my mindset, this kid was probably not going to be eligible. We kind of had the mindset of that. And he goes, no, actually, that kid's fine. I just looked through all of her stuff. Let me just tell you about this other kid. Well, the fact was, she had taken so many advanced courses. She'd skipped over a course that she didn't need to have, quote unquote, to graduate from the high school, but she needed for eligibility for the NCAA. So I had to call this 4.0 kid and tell her, this is crazy, this 4.0 kid, that you need to take a summer class in order to be eligible. I don't know who was crying more tears on the phone, if it was me or her parents, because this kid did all the things right, so she thought, but nobody checked up on the process. And so it's really important to start the process early to make sure you're going to be on track in terms of eligibility, make sure you're getting on a coach's radar, and that you're initiating as a student athlete that you're interested in the college. Do not just sit back and think that the colleges know you're interested in them. You want to be writing them and saying, hey, here's a video link, and here's the information about me academically. Here's what I'm looking to study, and I'm really interested in your school, and tell me why, and personalize those emails. Don't hire some recruiting service to come on and say, oh, we'll just blast emails out to college coaches for you, because college coaches hate that. They want a personalized email from you. Just send your links either from Huddle, or if you have YouTube, just put some video links up there, send out emails. And we have a great free special report on my website, strategies to emailing a college coach. completely for free. If you guys want to download that too, you can find that at rlopezcoaching.com. And so we kind of help you get started in understanding what it looks like to really send emails and start initiating the process with college coaches. But again, you need to know what the schools can do in return. It depends on the level and the sport and what your graduation year is of what they can do in response. And so don't just assume they're not responding, so they're not interested. They may not be able to respond quite yet. And so again, you're just going to know what those are. Those rules, again, it varies by sport and graduation year and also the level of which you're looking at colleges.
So one other thing that I hear all the time too is you've got just a phenomenal athlete. And, let's talk football because I'm thinking of one in particular. And, he's obviously someone that can play at an elite level. And so, we don't worry about his grades. He's good enough that they'll get him in. What do you say there?
That is very old school thinking. And the reality is it doesn't happen. Just like I said to you, this one kid that we thought that, we were kind of like, I don't even know if she's going to get accepted. And we just kind of, we're kind of like, it was a long shot. We knew that. She ended up improving her test scores with reasons that she actually got in, and her grades improved from her sophomore year to her junior year, which helped. But the fact was, a lot of people assume that it's a very old school way of thinking. Do not assume that the parents that, a lot of parents will think that, oh, well, it's okay. The coach will just say, oh, we'll just figure out a way. And the fact is, coaches do not make any decisions on acceptance. There is an admissions committee that is completely separate. Coaches can recommend, but the fact is that admissions committee can still deny a kid in terms of they don't meet certain requirements. And so very important for kids, again, to start that process early. Like I said, freshman, sophomore, you're looking on the websites and looking and see what test scores you need to have, looking and seeing what a typical GPA is, expected. And again, that typical coursework that they want you to have of being accepted to the college, but then also to being, eligible for the NCAA. It's really a misnomer that people say that, oh, we're just a good athlete, they'll just get you in. It doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, as much as people want it to, it just doesn't. And, sometimes that may mean you have to look at a junior college route instead, and then look to transfer if your grades aren't there. But that's why I say, let's start the process as 8th graders and 9th graders. So we realize our grades matter. From 9th grade all the way on, all those grades actually matter. And so don't just slough off for a year because you don't feel like it does matter, but it does. College coaches are going to look at those as well as admissions committees. So want to make sure that we are committed to our academics, because what that does is also from a college coach's perspective is that if you're committed to your academics, it shows that you're not lazy in certain parts of your life. So if you're just lazy, in school, does that really transfer over? You're not lazy on the field. And the fact is, it usually is. There is a transfer. And so we want to make sure that, we are recruiting high academic kids as well as talented athletes. And, the biggest thing that I think, that came out of all my research was 65 college coaches and athletic directors. Again, we had people on like the University of Florida athletic director. We had the rifle coach from NC State and the head women's soccer coach at Virginia, who's also U.S. Women's National Team assistant. And all these people are included in our research. And it was fun to see. One of the things I kept asking them, what do you guys look for in an athlete? What is the big thing you want from an athlete? And everyone says, we want good grades. We want talented athletes. But the third thing I think is one of the most key, and this transfers over to being an entrepreneur, this transfers over to whatever field you work in, if you're working in a hospital, you work as a teacher, whatever it may be. The number 3 thing that they look for beyond quality academics and then quality as an athlete is, how do you deal with adversity and the resiliency, and how do you bounce back? And so I think that's a really interesting fact that we really have to take into perspective as we really push kids forward, especially as we're dealing with COVID times and all the challenges that's presented this past year.
Absolutely. And, I've never coached at the college level, but my assumption is that if I'm a coach looking at 2 identical athletes in talent, and I know one's got great grades, one has poor grades, I know which one I'm not going to have to worry about, right?
200%. And college coaches can choose from kids all across the country. So we look at that and go, well, they have tons of choices. So they can pass over you and just look at the kid that is, the exact same talent, like you said. And the grades do matter.
Absolutely. So many directions I want to go here. And a lot of the questions I'm going to ask are from a coaching perspective and from a parent that's been through the recruiting process. And so I know these are questions that get asked often. You know, starting at a young age, when a kid wants to play at the next level, especially right now, if they're a basketball player, we're in March Madness, you know, they've got their dreams. They're going to North Carolina, they're going to Kentucky, they're going wherever they are. It's D1 or bust. Talk a little bit about the difference between D1, D2, D3, NAIA, JUCO, because I know a lot of students that are discouraged if they're only getting D2 scholarships, or what do you mean go to a JUCO? And they don't realize that, you know what, playing at a JUCO is high level.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know, there is, that we refer to as college coaches, we call it, they get D1 on the brain. And we want to clear that out, because the fact is, I encourage kids when you're starting out and you start emailing college coaches is to take your emails and actually find 20 to 30 schools that fit your academics in terms of what you think you want to major in, or a couple of choices what you may want to major in, because we know kids change their majors. But also taking a look and seeing, location, where do you want to be, especially if you're an outdoor sport, that plays a role. I live in Florida now, and but I've coached in Florida, but I've also coached in Colorado and in the mountains and areas, too. So two different conversations if you're an outdoor sport. Colorado gets snow in May sometimes, and preseason in Florida or in the South is a little different in August versus what it may be in other places of the country. But so I think, looking at that location, but also the size of a school, that's important. Where you're going to be successful academically. A lot of kids are not going to be successful when they have a lecture hall of 400 kids, and they may not even go to class. That's a whole different conversation too. But looking and saying, also how far away do you want to be from home where your parents can come and see you? Are you going to be a plane flight away where mom and dad can't always come and watch your games? Or, and thinking through all those factors, I think is really important. And then also realizing only a small portion of kids are going to be able to go and play in the Power 5 schools, the ACC, the SEC, as we all kind of talk about, and looking and saying, and I've been on, as a GA on staff at the University of Florida. So I know what that level is like. I've been a D1 head coach. I've been a D2 head coach and an NAIA head coach. And so, the fact is I have seen all levels of the game. And obviously I coach soccer is my sport, but the fact is I've seen, what that can look like all across the board. And there are good programs at every single level. There are also bad programs at every single level. So you need to research each of the programs and what's a good fit for you. There are Division II programs and there are Division III programs and NAIA programs that could beat a Division I school. They can. They absolutely 100% can. And, it's fun to really start to realize that you may have a different experience at a Division II or Division III or NAIA school or junior college. That's still a competitive one. But the fact is, it may not have the D1 title. Now, there are scholarships that are available at the junior college level that may not be as many, at the Division I level, that there may be even more at the junior college level, or may opportunities for NAI and Division IIs, to be able to have some of those athletic scholarships, or maybe even more playing time. And I think that's a big key is, let's say you're thinking at, whether you're talking basketball and, do you want to be number 16 kid on the bench, or do you want, or maybe a sport like soccer where they have 30 kids on a roster, do you want to be number 30 kid on the roster at a Division I? Or do you want to go and look and say, well, I could go and have immediate playing time, as a freshman, or maybe early on, in my sophomore year at a Division II or NAI school. And so I always tell everyone, when you start emailing coaches, 20 to 30 college coaches you're going to contact is to start this process. And I'd say 5 to 8 at every level. The other key part of this is, especially as you start this early, you'll realize that NAI schools and junior colleges have much fewer restrictions in terms of communication. So you can actually start talking with them earlier and get a feel and get comfortable with doing an interview with a college coach, because some can be a little intimidating, but the idea of get to know what that looks like. And so I always tell kids, start with the process, throw emails out to 20 to 30 schools, 5 to 8 at every level, and see who bites. Instead of just throwing it out to all the ACC or the SEC and think, well, nobody returned my emails. Well, okay, now you're out of luck. Let's just think instead, when you start to see who is actually interested in you, now you start to continue to research at that level and see who is interested, especially for the roles that you need for that graduating year. They're, that recruiting class are going to only need certain positions. And so, you only need so many bigs on a basketball team, right? You only need so many goalkeepers on a soccer team. And so the idea is, what are their needs for those graduation years and what your graduation year is. And so it's really important to start out with a wide range of schools and then slowly narrow, as opposed to what most people do is, oh, I emailed 3 schools and they never got back to me, so I'm just not going to play. And I think that's the key, is we want to find the right fit for every kid academically, the right fit socially, and the right fit financially and athletically. It's really important to find that right fit.
Love it. Now, I know your answer to this, but I want to hear you explain it. So a young athlete right now, and I think something that you continue to say is you keep calling them student athletes. And that's something I always tell my players is, remember what word comes first there. You're a student athlete. I think that's important to remember. But as a young student athlete, that they're listening right now, okay, I've got to start looking at the different levels. I've got to send out all these emails. Do I just get mom and dad to send it for me?
Absolutely not. College coaches want to hear from student athletes. They want to hear from you. They want to get to know you. They want to interact with you and get to know who you are as a kid and if you fit into the culture of their team. They don't want to hear from mom and dad. And very, very important for your moms and dads to hear, most of the time, college coaches are going to delete your email. They're just not going to even respond. And people say, what? That's so crazy. Well, think of this like a job application process. They don't want to hear from your parents. They will want to talk to who is going to be working with them. And, college coaches really are good about, we're used to talking on the phone with 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And so we're very used to the process. And, when kids are shy, we understand that, but one of the great things that we have is, included in my book is I have 13 questions to ask a college coach. So when a kid gets on the phone with them, they're like, I don't know what to say. Look in my book. It has couple questions that's going to help you in understanding what you can be asking a coach instead of getting all nervous. To write a couple of them down and be prepared to ask those questions. But you can also ask a couple of those along the way in your emails, or when you start to get to maybe a Zoom session or a phone call with them, or if you're on campus and actually visiting with them. But the fact is, we don't want the parents to take the lead. We want the student athletes to take the lead. Moms and dads, we know you have one really, really important question: finances. We know that, okay? But the fact is, let the process play out and let the coaches get to know the student athletes, see if they're a good fit for them academically, athletically, socially, that they fit well into the team, and then get to the idea of the finances. A lot of people say, well, let's find out if they have scholarship money right now. And it's like, you don't need to ask that in your first email to a college coach. You say, why? Well, coach, let's just get to the bottom line. The fact of the matter is, that's like asking, let's get married on the first date. You would think someone's crazy because you're like, whoa, let me run away from this situation. Like, what is going on, right? Instead, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get to know you. You want to get to know if you're a right fit academically, athletically, socially, culturally with the team. And then we get to the conversation about finances. And so it's really, really important for parents to let your student athletes take the lead. You can help mentor them. I highly encourage you to take a look and read the book as well as your student athletes. But the fact is let the student athletes be the one initiating conversations, being on the phone. You can be sitting there next to them, have it on speakerphone. That's totally fine. And the idea is we want them to take the lead, but you as a parent to be a mentor to them.
That's great. And that's actually, that was the route my daughter would always take. Yes, I'll go talk, but can you be in the room and I'll just put it on speakerphone. And so, yeah, I think that's great because you're right. It's intimidating, but it's not like these coaches have never talked to a 16-year-old. So that is great. Now, one of the things that is often unknown, can you explain some of the terminology like dead period and things like that? I remember being in Chicago at a tournament, and one of the coaches that my daughter really was interested in walked into an elevator with us. And, we're like, oh, great, we can have a conversation. He's like, sorry, I can't talk. And so kind of explain some of those rules.
Yeah, so there's different rules for the NCAA, again, at different levels and as well as different sports during different times of the year. So unfortunately, what I've given you is very vague, and I intentionally said that way. The fact is, I highly encourage you, download from our website completely for free the Division I rules, basic rules, or Division II and Division III basic rules. And so you know what those are for your sport is very key, and your graduation year, okay, depending on what level you're talking with. But I think it's important to know right now, obviously, the NCAA has instituted a dead period for Division I sports, basically to kind of make it kind of a fair play in recruiting, because Division IIs, Division IIIs, and NAIA schools oftentimes do a little bit more regional recruiting. So if a state was shut down, it's a little bit different versus nationally when we're looking, let's just say the Pac-12, and you were comparing, the Big Ten or the SEC, the ACC. Let's think that level. Okay, if California was shut down, they couldn't bring kids into recruiting. And now, but the SEC could. Like, how bad is that going to play out in football? Let's just think of football, or maybe in basketball, right? And so what they had done for Division I for the past year and up through May 31st, right now of 2021, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, they have a dead period in place. What does that mean? That means that you cannot have a face-to-face, in-person meeting with a coach on their campus. What does it not mean? You can still email coaches. You can still be on Zoom calls with them, or text them, or interact with them on the phone, whatever it may be. Okay. You can also still do a normal campus tour like a normal student would. So you just may not be able to do an athletic tour, but you can do a campus tour, which, a lot of kids can just do a campus tour, and, with admissions and go, ooh, I really like this school, or, ooh, I need to cross the school off my list. I'm not interested in this school. And so it is very important to know that the dead period is going on just for Division I right now. That is through, again, May 31st. We are waiting to see what that's going to happen in terms of what happens for June. That will be voted upon in April by the NCAA. And so they'll let you know what that looks like. And if you follow me on social media, you'll definitely be able to know all those updates, as well as follow the NCAA Eligibility Center and the NCAA normal Twitter and Instagram and things like that. They usually update things on there too. So, but it's very important to know there's dead periods during the year. There's quiet periods during the year. This is the one that's implemented, that's impacting the most people right now, because you can't have a face-to-face on campus with a coach. They also cannot be hosting camps right now for Division I, and they also cannot go off campus to be able to recruit and watch you and evaluate you, which has put a little bit damper on the recruiting process for a lot of kids. But one of the great things is a lot of kids have started looking at other levels and seeing, oh, maybe these are other schools I'm interested in, and take a look at those. And then hopefully some things will open up this summer and be a little bit better for that process for them. But I think it's really, really important to know what your rules are for your level of the school you're speaking with, as well as your sport and your graduation year, because that varies by graduation year especially too. So also when you go to tournaments, things like that, a lot of times there'll be tournament rules where you can't speak to someone in the middle of a tournament, like you probably when you're on an elevator. And college coaches have to be very, very careful on this. Again, having been an NCAA compliance director, I understand this. Is they can't put themselves and their program at risk to have illegal recruiting violations taking place. And so they are uberly cautious, and you will see them pull away from a situation. They would love to talk with you. Them saying, I can't speak with you right now, has nothing to do with their desire to speak with you. That is that they cannot. Otherwise, they can put their team in violations for which can have serious impact on their programs for not just that year, but also long term. And so it's really, really important that you understand what the rules are, so we respect them. That doesn't mean you can't reach out to them via email. Always reach out to them via email. They're getting your emails. They just may not be able to respond. So keep emailing, keep contacting them. Again, you want to be on their radar by the time you're end of your sophomore year for sure.
Excellent. So if you're sitting in the elevator, you can sit next to them and email them, but don't say anything.
Absolutely. You can tell them, hey, check your email, FYI. I just sent you an email. But maybe that works too.
Oh, we don't have a lot more time, but I want to hear your thoughts on a few things. For athletes that are graduating 2021, I feel their pains. I feel bad for them because it is a rough year for them. Everything's different. Plus, the need for new athletes into programs is so different because everyone kept their eligibility. So share your thoughts on some of that. And if you're an athlete that's graduating this year, what do you do?
I think, unfortunately, with the whole COVID shutdowns, everything situation, seasons canceled, everything across the board, NCAA took steps to be able to allow those kids to have an extra year of eligibility. What that did cause for the next 4 years, not just a 1-year problem, but a 4-year problem, is there is going to be a lot less demand for roster spots in terms of from the coaches' needs, because many of these kids can be able to return, and they're going to choose to return for next year of eligibility. Is every kid in America going to do that? Absolutely not. There are kids that are like, I'm getting out of school, I'm going to grad school, I've got a job lined up, all those things, okay? But the fact is, a lot of kids are going to take that opportunity if they have it, because some of them can pursue a master's degree or pick up a double major or a minor in order to and keep being able to play, which is a great opportunity for them. So there's going to be a lot less demand and a higher supply of athletes. So what does that mean? It means you have to be open to looking at all levels, open to looking at different areas of the country as well, and not just limit your approach, because there are going to be some schools that will simply say, we're finished with recruiting. And they say, well, why can't you just add one more kid on the roster? And it's like, well, wait a minute. They're also having budget cuts because of COVID and the impacts that are going on. And so they are having to reduce their rosters in a year that maybe some of these seniors are trying to return. So their need for transfers or even freshmen coming in is much less. And so unfortunately, it became much more competitive in recruiting. So that's where I come in. That's where I try and help kids as much as possible, teach them what to do, and really to look and be open to possibilities and to really research what's a good fit for them academically, athletically, socially, and then obviously financially too.
And you answered one of my questions that I was going to ask next. Is not only are they facing that, but we're seeing the programs having budget cuts that are adding on to all the stress. And so that's something I've been thinking as we've been having this conversation. If you're a student athlete, whether you're in 8th grade or you're a senior, the things that you can learn from this book, even if you think you're to the point that you're done your recruiting, get it. There's so much valuable information in there. So this is definitely a book that it's not a good suggestion. It's a must-have. If you're looking at going to the next level, this is a must-have book. There's so much valuable information in there. But you know what? This has been great. Wish we had a lot more time to go through this, because there's so much we could continue on with. But maybe just add your final thoughts. And also, actually, I'm going to halt there and see if I'm going to ask you something that you can decide how you want to answer, if you want to answer. Do you follow basketball?
Sure.
So with everything happening right now with March Madness, there's a lot of discrepancy with what women's basketball is getting and men's basketball are getting. What are your thoughts on that little topic right now?
Well, that's probably an hour-long show to answer that question. But, I think it's important that all of our student athletes are treated and prepared and have access to the same resources. And I think that means, all the things that have been going on all over social media. It's been crazy. I've been on the inside of it too, and seeing some of what has been solved and resolved. I'm glad some of the different companies stepped up and helped, but it is an area for sure that needs to be addressed. And I'll leave those to the NCAA world. I think they realize they need to fix a few things. So I'll leave that to the experts working in the NCAA.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. Well, share with us, in the show notes, I'm going to have all your links. I'm going to have link to the book, everything, but share with us more about where people can find you, where they can follow you, and just connect with you.
Absolutely. We have tons of blogs on my website, rlopezcoaching.com. You can see we have over 40 blogs on the college recruiting process. At the bottom of any one of those blogs, you can scroll down, especially for parents. We have multiple Facebook groups. One of the Facebook groups we run is specifically for parents, called Educating Parents of High School Student Athletes on the college recruiting process. We have over 22,000 people in that Facebook group. intentionally, we also have a bunch of my team of experts. We have test prep experts. We have someone who does ACL prevention. We have someone who's a mental game coach. We have someone who works with kids on how do you get the local scholarship, not the athletic scholarship, but how do you get the local credit union or the Kiwanis scholarship, things like that. And so we have a ton of experts that are in there to be able to help you. And then we also have a bunch of families who have been through this process and during COVID, so they understand all the struggles and the stress that's going on. So highly encourage you guys to link onto those into our Facebook group and learn more. And then obviously you can follow us as well with all the blogs that are out there, and then pick up a copy of the book, lookingforafullride.com. And like I said, we also have tons of other resources on the website, a special report for free. It is Strategies to Emailing a College Coach, and tons of other NCAA documents we can go in there as well that are on, as well as NCAA and NAIA documents to be able to help you understand what this whole process looks like. And we're here to walk you through the whole process. And so if you are interested and need some individual consulting, I do that as well. And you can email me at info@lookingforafullride.com, and we'll see when I can get you onto my schedule, because it's been a little crazy since COVID hit, for sure, of consulting.
I bet it has. Well, thank you. And again, whatever stage you're at in the recruiting process, this is such a valuable book, and those sites that she's mentioning, make sure to check them out. But thank you, Renee. I appreciate all this, and I know this is going to be very helpful to a lot of our student athletes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.